Welcome viewers. In this episode of our Young Innovators series, we'll speak with Lauryn Graham, a law student at the University of Leeds. Lauryn is also a brand ambassador for Baker McKenzie, and her innovative TikTok video, which is part of her application process, has received over 25,000 views on LinkedIn. So thank you for joining me today, Lauryn.
Hi Rami, thank you for having me. It's great to be part of the series.
Awesome, yeah, and I saw your video and I was quite impressed with both, the content and the sort of innovative approach you had to it, but also the amount of views you managed to gain. So congratulations on your success there.
Thank you very much. I really wasn't expecting it to be as widely viewed as it was, but I've had such a positive response and, made some really lovely connections through it. So it's been brilliant.
Fantastic. So I gave you a little bit of an introduction at the start, but could you just tell me a little bit more about yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you say, I'm currently at the University of Leeds. I am going into my final year of my law degree. I was studying abroad this year. I was in China from September to February. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, that came to an early end. So since then, I've been working for the NHS within recruitment. That's been great. So it sort of worked out well because I've benefited from having sort of partial year abroad and a partial year in industry as such. So I'm returning to university this year to finish off my degree. And yeah, like you said, I've recently secured the brand ambassador position with Baker McKenzie. So just sort of starting to get started with that role and come up with a few ideas.
Fantastic. And for those who maybe haven't seen the actual video, could you just describe sort of the content of it and why you think it was successful in your application?
Hi, my name is Lauryn Graham and I'm in my penultimate year of a law degree at the University of Leeds, and I'm applying to be Baker McKenzie's next brand ambassador. So what makes me different? I've just returned from studying abroad in Shanghai, where I studied law, politics and Mandarin. Ni hao, 很高兴认识你. I believe this experience as an international student is something that I can bring to the role of Baker McKenzie's next brand ambassador. As Baker McKenzie rightfully prides itself on a diverse workforce and culture, I believe this starts with engagement with international students prior to the application stage.
What makes Baker McKenzie different? Which firm is providing pro bono support to JMA Wireless regarding the development of emergency mechanical ventilators for COVID-19? Which firm offers trainees an international vacation scheme between securing and starting a training contract? Which firm has been awarded the Best Law Firm Brand for the 10th consecutive year by Acritas Global Elite Law Firm Brand Index? Which firm should hire me as their next brand ambassador? Thank you for watching.
Yeah, absolutely. So the video begins with the green screen effect of Suits, the TV show, in the background. So there's Harvey Specter, Lewis Litt, and Mike Ross in the background. And that sort of section was introducing myself to the firm, why I was applying for the role. And then in the second section, it moves to me being sat on a plane. Embarrassing, but I had myself as a passenger sat next to me reading a magazine. As a green screen effect, and in that section I was sort of talking about my experiences studying abroad in China, what I was studying over there, and how I thought I could bring that to the role of the brand ambassador, sort of in terms of engaging with international students. I also used that section to demonstrate my language capabilities because I was learning Mandarin whilst I was out in China, so I spoke a little bit of Chinese during that section. And then in the final section, I wanted to bring in a trend that was going around in TikTok at the time. So there was a trend that was sort of a voiceover, and the voice would give sort of two options, and the person on the camera would tilt their head either way depending on which option they preferred. And so in that section, I had 5 of Baker McKenzie's competitors on the one hand, and then Baker McKenzie on the other side. And I would voice over some things about some sort of facts about the firm, such as which firm allows you to undertake an international vacation scheme between securing a training contract and actually starting. And then I would nod towards Baker McKenzie for the answer to that question. So that was sort of what the 60 seconds consisted of.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how much thought process and how much time and effort you put into sort of planning each part of the video, because in 60 seconds you wouldn't think that you could jam so much into it, but it's great to see how much you managed to do, and again that you're successful in that. And in terms of when you actually submitted the video, have you received any sort of feedback from Baker McKenzie in terms of the quality, or did they just say it was successful?
So the email that we got when we were informed that we were successful was really, really nice. Something I've noticed particularly over sort of the application season this year, particularly within the legal sector, but also in wider graduate schemes, is that sometimes, regardless of whether you're successful or unsuccessful, the emails that you receive are sort of quite minimal and you don't receive feedback as much. And I think it's particularly important with unsuccessful applications because, you know, you want to know where to improve, so that if you decide to apply for that same company again, you know where you've gone wrong and how to give yourself a stronger chance going forward. But even when you're successful, it's sort of nice to know where your strengths were and why the firm have selected you. So we got an email outlining which parts of our application they were particularly impressed with, and that included the TikTok video on mine. And then since then, with the interactions with the graduate recruitment team, they've brought up like our TikTok videos and sort of shared them with the other brand ambassadors so people could see what we did. And so they've sort of been celebrated in that way, which was really nice.
And when you found out that you had to actually record a TikTok video, what was your sort of thought process in terms of what you were going to do? Did you have like a plan a long time before you actually recorded it, or is it something that you kind of thought last minute? And did you have any sort of inspiration from any other sort of TikTok videos, as you said, you might have had?
Yeah, so I was really, really excited when I found out that TikTok was going to be part of the application process. It was the first time that I'd really seen a business, but nonetheless a law firm, trying to integrate TikTok into their recruitment. And I'm a big fan of TikTok myself, spent a few too many hours on there in my free time. I was sort of conscious of trying to get the balance right between making it engaging, showcasing my personality and sort of trying to add a bit of humour into it, whilst also answering the questions that were asked. And so I sat down and sort of broke down what I thought that they were trying to assess within that video, much like in a normal application process where you have a cover letter, a CV, a video interview. They're all assessing different things. And so I was trying to ask myself sort of why I thought they'd chosen a TikTok for this role in particular, and how it's best to sort of showcase personality through that rather than just a 60-second video, for example, and so why they'd asked us to use that medium. In terms of my inspiration for the actual individual segments of the video, again, I think just trying to be quite analytical with things. I chose Suits over How to Get Away with Murder because Suits is obviously commercial law, and I think even for non-law students, it's the first thing that people tend to think about when they think of international law. So that was sort of why I chose to open with that as just a widely recognised thing, and also demonstrated that I know what type of firm Baker McKenzie is. The second section was sort of inspired by some videos that I'd seen over the course of the pandemic of people that were going on staycations, and they'd film sort of through their washing machine to make it look like they were on an aeroplane, and then they would go out into their back garden and have their sun lounger out. So that was sort of my inspiration for that, just integrating sort of like being on a plane to demonstrate my year abroad, as I say, like my language skills in that section. And then the third section being that just a popular trend that was going around at the time. I didn't fancy my chances of doing one of the dance challenges. So that's why I sort of went for that. I think it's quite important when you've got a video application to sort of utilise the opportunities that presents outside of a normal cover letter or application. So you've got the opportunity to still convey information without speaking verbally about it through the props and the things that you use in the video. So I never expressly said that like who Baker McKenzie's competitors were, but through using that background where I had the competitors on the one hand and Baker McKenzie on the other, that was sort of demonstrating that I know who their direct competitors are. So when I'm acting as their brand ambassador and speaking to potential applicants, I know which other firms that they would be looking for, and I can highlight the differences between Baker McKenzie and those direct competitors. So I think, just really making sure that you make the most of all of the little opportunities that like submitting a video presents.
Yeah, and I think that's good that you incorporated things that you didn't necessarily say out loud, but that you sort of shown through sort of the visual aspect of the video. And just to bring it to the very, very start, why did you actually decide to apply for the Baker McKenzie Brand Ambassador Programme?
So sort of with going on my year abroad, it presented a lot of opportunities, and I'm very, very grateful that I went. And I mean, I'm one of those people that speaks a lot about my year abroad, so I won't digress too much. But one of the, maybe not negatives, but one of the things I struggled with coming back from my year abroad is I felt a little bit out of touch with law because I didn't go on a law specific exchange, and I wasn't applying for vacation schemes and training contracts during that period because of the way that the 2-year recruitment works with law firms. I would be a year behind, and they don't defer. Generally, law firms won't defer. So with not applying to law firms much whilst I was out there, I just felt a little bit out of it in that respect. And so I thought being a brand ambassador would be a brilliant opportunity to sort of throw myself back into that. Baker McKenzie is certainly one of the firms that I'm interested in potentially training with. I was fortunate to visit their Shanghai office whilst I was out in China. So I just very much saw the personal benefits of being a brand ambassador to sort of integrate me back into that. Really build up a personal development and relationship with the firm, but also just within my law school, building up a bit of a network with other students, and that's already happened quite quickly through LinkedIn, particularly in response to the TikTok video. I've had a lot of people at the University of Leeds reaching out, and so I'm now in a year group where a lot of my friends graduated last year whilst I was out on my year abroad. So it's been brilliant in that respect to really network with my cohort and just feel like an integral, like feel part of the community within my law school again.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that, you know, this opportunity that you've managed to successfully apply for has allowed you to sort of connect with, you know, fellow students in your year. And just you know, I know a few people personally who've maybe had a you know, a scheme, an opportunity or anything sort of cancelled because of coronavirus. So how did you deal with sort of the disappointment that came with that?
So it is disappointing, but I think without sounding too, you know, overly optimistic and corny, everything does happen for a reason. And so sort of trying to turn it around, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with having down weeks and weeks where you, particularly, you know, if your vacation scheme wasn't deferred and it was just cancelled. I think that's a really unfortunate thing that's happened for a couple of people this year, where they're having to just reapply in the next application cycle, which is going to be naturally more competitive because they'll be applying with this year's graduates. And so it's of course normal you should feel those losses, and it's fine to not, for every day not to be productive, but then sort of just trying to pick yourself up from that and think, right, well, what have I learned from this process? And I think this year a lot of law firm applications, particularly the competency questions, are going to change, and I think they will have a shift towards coronavirus and what you've done over the pandemic to overcome sort of the adversities and the disappointments and things that have people have experienced during the pandemic. So if you can convey in your applications what you've done in lieu of those opportunities that have unfortunately been cancelled, I think that demonstrates a lot about you as a person. It demonstrates resilience, sort of innovative, just being creative, and just demonstrates a lot of things that they're looking for, I think, in their trainees, because a lot of things don't always go to plan.
Yeah, I think that was a good point about how a lot of the questions will change towards what you've done during COVID. I know I've certainly had a few applications which have had COVID-related questions. And I think your video is going to be a bit of an inspiration for other students who have to do a sort of TikTok video or a video on another application. So do you have any advice for anybody who has to actually go through that process from your own experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that it'll become a much more prevalent part of law firm applications this year, everything being virtual and that sort of lack of interpersonal face-to-face interactions. Videos are a good way to sort of gauge someone's personality and how they present themselves. I think it's important to recognise that you've got quite a short period of time, so make sure that everything you're saying has a purpose, and that you're not sort of wasting time where you could be saying something else. So personal brand, I think, is quite an important thing, and that was something that we were spoken to about during the induction for the brand ambassador role. So I sort of understand personal brand as being what people would describe you as when you walk out of the room. So, you know, what we want people to think of you as and what your USP is. So maybe when you're planning for your video, just jot down a few points that you want to get across about yourself in that video. break down what you think the law firm is looking for in that video. So often they'll give you a bit of a brief. We were told in the video that they wanted us to address why us for the role of brand ambassador, and also what makes Baker McKenzie different from other international commercial law firms. So just making sure that you really are addressing all of the questions that are being directly asked of you, but also those subliminal things that are coming from them assessing this by means of a video. So just making sure that you're well presented, trying to make eye contact with the camera, those sorts of things are all quite important. And sort of to go back to what we were saying earlier about, don't underestimate the importance of utilising other things than just what you're speaking about, because you've got such a short period of time. There are ways to convey that you've done your research about the firm just through the means that you use to create the video.
And do you think there are any sort of drawbacks, either for law firms or for students, to having to do sort of like a video application?
I think it pushes people out of their comfort zones from the perspective of students, because it doesn't feel like a normal application. It's not something that we're necessarily used to. And I think even though I was excited for the TikTok, I was also a little bit daunted by it, because I could see what other people were doing with their TikToks, because some people posted theirs publicly and some people approached it much differently than I did. And that's not to say that there's a right or wrong way of doing things. Some people did it as a very formal, it was essentially just a normal 60-second video. They didn't really utilise the effects as much and just sat and did the 60-second video as sort of like just a normal video. Some people went really, really creative. Some people didn't speak in theirs. So it can be daunting to know where the line is in terms of creativity and, you know, wanting to showcase your personality, but also reserving that level of like formalness because you are applying for a job. So I would just advise people to not be scared to be creative and just think the person watching the video on the other side, they're also a person. And so just present yourself in a conscious way, in a way that if you were on the other side of the camera watching that video, that you would think, oh yeah, that's someone that we want to work for our company. From the perspective of graduate recruitment, I've worked in recruitment for the NHS for the past couple of months, as I mentioned, and I think videos are something that are being embraced quite a lot, because in lieu of face-to-face interviews, as I say, it's maybe the closest thing to being able to like understand what a person's like outside of a piece of paper and a CV. So I do think that's something that will become more prevalent in applications, and I think it's something to be embraced.
And you actually just touched on what I was going to ask next. So yeah, just to sort of expand on this point, do you think that law firms are going to sort of incorporate video technology like TikTok or any other platform more in applications in the future, or do you think this is more for like sort of brand ambassador programs where it's more like about sort of interacting with other students?
So I think it's a bit of a tough one, because I'm not sure there's many people that would disagree that the legal sector is quite traditional in comparison to other sectors, other careers, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be, but there is some reluctance from maybe older generations, or just there's obviously a level of prestige and history behind law firms, so I understand the reasons why they sort of want to hold on to that, and there may be a bit more resistance to change. I think this is quite well demonstrated in terms of CVs. I was having a conversation with a fellow student the other day, and she is doing a marketing degree, and she applied for a job with Lush, and as part of her application she created a little black box, which is how Lush sell their products, and within this she had little chits of paper which aligned her experience with the value of Lush. And she said one of her friends who does fashion marketing sewed her CV into a garment that she'd made, I believe it was a t-shirt, and then another of her friends who was applying for a job in a wine bar created his CV to look like a wine menu. And so I think we've got all of these exciting new technologies and marketing materials available to us online, and students with boundless levels of creativity, but the application process in the legal sector doesn't maybe allow for people to really make the most of that and take advantage of that, because maybe they're seen the skills that are seen as more crucial to being a lawyer than being able to market and being creative, but that is definitely a part of being a lawyer. So I think another thing is with CVs, whilst I was away in China, a lot of my friends were European, and in other countries they use a photo of themselves on their CV to make CVs a little bit more personable than just, writing on a piece of paper. And they also use colours, where I saw an article the other day from a senior partner at a firm that I won't name, but he said that if he saw a CV with sort of bright colours on or pictures on, he would automatically throw it out, because he sees sort of the extravagant presentation to be deflecting from a lack of substance in the actual content of a CV. And so, that being the case, I think law firms are going to be one of the ones that are maybe a bit slower to move towards integrating things such as TikTok into the application process. I think it's probably something that you'll see in other sectors, such as marketing jobs. And I think maybe other law firms will start using it for brand ambassador positions, because, as you say, that's more of like a marketing related role. And so you really do need to have the ability to be able to sell yourself and to be creative and use different forms of media to reach out to other students and to be effective in your marketing on social media. In terms of actual vacation schemes and training contract applications, I think we're probably a little bit of a way off for those will start getting integrated. I'm conscious that I've been speaking for a little while, but something that I've noticed recently that's been quite interesting in America is there are some individual lawyers who have started using TikTok as a form of sort of legal education. And so, as opposed to giving out actual legal advice, they're just using its short videos to explain little areas of law to people in really basic terms. So there's a lady called Kelly who is on TikTok. I think she has 5.6 million likes and around a 300,000 following. Her videos get around 700,000 views. And she is a family lawyer that specialises in divorce, and she creates short, sort of humorous videos about what people's legal rights are, and they've gained massive traction. So people are interested, and the market is there, whether it's students or people that just want bite-sized information. But I think that's just one good example of an individual lawyer that's sort of embracing alternative technologies. But whether big law firms will sort of remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to hear your views on the fact that law firms may be more traditional, whether that's to preserve a sort of prestige element or just because they're slow to sort of adapt to technology, is up for debate. But just as a final question, how do you think technology can be incorporated into the role of a brand ambassador for just any law firm or any sort of organisation?
Well, I think that's a particularly important question for brand ambassadors this year and potentially years going forward, depending on how long social distancing restrictions last for. I definitely feel like the role that I'm taking on this year is probably very different to the brand ambassador who represented Baker McKenzie at Leeds last year. A lot of the role has now become virtual, and so it's important to integrate technology in terms of your marketing of the firm, because that's how you're mostly going to reach out to people and to get across the messages that you're trying to, because you don't have face-to-face law fairs where that would be where you would maybe mix with most people. So I think effective use of social media is definitely something that's important, but there's so many brilliant marketing resources that are free online now that you can use to create little sort of Instagram type posts to put out things about the firm. So something that I've been doing just this last week was a bite-sized deal series, which was about Baker McKenzie. And so I designed, as I say, they sort of looked like Instagram posts. They were quite visual and visually focused. And they summarised a recent deal that Baker McKenzie have advised on. It was sort of to highlight a variety of different key practice areas that the firm specialises in, what teams would be involved in that, what jurisdictions that impacts on. And then it would sort of summarise the involvement of the firm, break down some of the key legal matters that would have been involved in that deal, and then sort of giving people some footing to do further research in terms of the implications that I'll have for the wider industry, the implications it would have for other like clients of Baker McKenzie, some potential threats to clients. So definitely integrating technology in that sense, going beyond just like text posts, I think is something that brand ambassadors can really utilise this year.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining me, Lauren. We covered many sort of interesting but also informative areas, your personal experience through the process of making the TikTok video, and some advice you have, and just general sort of advice for anybody interested in sort of a brand ambassador position in any law firm, in any sort of area of industry as well. So thank you very much for joining me. You've been a fantastic guest.
Thank you very, very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.